Welcome to Northbound Alaska, the Trucking Files, a podcast where we talk to haul road drivers, both past and present, to carry on the knowledge and experience of one of the toughest roads on Earth.
On this episode, Aaron and Nathan sit down with John Sauer. John Sauer was born in Fairbanks, Alaska. Started driving the haul road in the 1970s. Spent many years working at Jim River Camp as DOT maintenance and operations. Drove pilot car for many years after, and has quite the story to tell. With over 4.5 million miles driving on the haul road alone, John Sauer is a man of experience.
Okay, we're here with John Sauers, the legendary John Sauers.
Oh, I don't know about legendary is...
Well, for us young guys, we can call you legends, all right?
Okay.
John, you've done quite a bit of work on this haul road, the Dalton Highway. I mean, you've been pretty versatile, pilot carring, truck driving, even working for the state, doing maintenance on the road, operating equipment, and I don't know, you probably even done some hunting up there at one point or another.
I have a little bit, yeah.
So, I don't even know where to start here.
Start with his childhood.
Let's start with your childhood. Were you born in Alaska or were you born somewhere else?
I was born in Fairbanks. My parents came to Alaska. My dad was in the military, and then when he got out after the war, he went back east and married my mom and brought her back to Alaska in an old, I think it was a 48 Dodge pickup, or Dodge Panel, and came up the Alaska Highway. And my brother had just been born, so he was just a baby when they came up, and then my younger brother and I were both born here.
So was that probably in the 50s then?
Yeah. I was born in 54, and Philip was born in 59. So, yeah, spent all my whole life here. I've been gone. I've left quite a few times, but I always seem to come back to my roots. Yeah.
Where were your folks from originally?
My dad was from Buffalo, New York, and my mom's from Toronto, Canada.
Okay.
So, they met at Bible school back east and then came back up. Been here ever since. Yeah. And that was their mission in coming to Alaska, was their missionary work.
Okay.
Was that always in Fairbanks, or were you all over the place?
Well, they originally came to Anchorage to Victory Bible Camp, and Johnny Gillespie was friends with theirs from back east, and he said there's a need for you in Fairbanks. So they took their $3.50 that they arrived in Alaska with and gathered up enough money to make it to Fairbanks, and lived in a Viz Queen tent for a while, and the rest is history. So they loved it here. This has been their home all my life. So they became snowbirds later in their lives, but yeah, I was really lucky to be raised here. It gave me so much opportunity, and seeing all the changes all my life here. So, yeah.
So were you born in the old hospital there where the...
Room 316, St. Joseph's.
Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Rebar.
You remember the number too, huh?
Oh, well, that was the delivery room for everybody in Fairbanks. And Dr. Rebar probably delivered half of Fairbanks back then.
Yeah.
So.
Well, he must have really enjoyed doing that, huh?
Dr. Rebar?
Yeah.
Apparently so. Yeah, what's really funny is his family, they're all still here. And of course, Fairbanks was a pretty small town back then, so everybody knew everybody anyway. So.
Yeah.
And he was one of the few doctors, family doctors. So
yeah. So what was that like growing up back in the late 50s and 60s in Fairbanks?
It was pretty limited as far as things to do and what to do and how to do it and access, and I mean for everybody. I mean, Fairbanks was pretty small back then, and it was of course pre-statehood. I'm a territorial, so even Fairbanks was a 2-lane road, dirt road on Airport Road and College Road, and no bridge on University Avenue. And my dad worked part-time out at the airport for Pan American, so I grew up on College Road, and he'd walk the railroad tracks and then walk down and cross the river on the ice. And in the summertime, there was a little rowboat they'd cross the river on, and that was our access. Otherwise, he'd have to go all the way through Fairbanks and back out to...
Is it kind of on Noise Slough there? They'd have to...
At the end of Noise Slough,
Yeah.
that comes out right above the
Where the bridge
University Avenue Bridge.
Yeah.
So, in the wintertime, you'd drop down and get a run at the other side and with a vehicle. But we didn't have a vehicle for a long time after they got to Alaska. It broke down, and so my dad walked everywhere. We walked all the time. I went to University Park School, and of course there wasn't buses much back then.
No, was that the old U Park?
Yes.
Okay, and it's still there.
It's
right?
still there, but I don't know that. I think it's still a grade school, but I'm not real sure.
The one that the university owns, right there off University Avenue.
Yeah, it's off University Avenue,
so
right by the railroad tracks.
Okay, yeah. So that's the university uses that for classes now for college kids.
Yeah,
that was the old U Park.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where you went to school.
Yeah, I went to University Park School and then Maine Junior High School, and then I'm a Lathrop graduate of 72.
I think everybody was going to Lathrop back then, right?
Well, we didn't have any other high school except
Yeah.
Ben Eielson had a high school. So that was the only high school in Fairbanks. There wasn't West Valley, there wasn't Hutchison.
Yeah. So were you like playing sports or building forts in the woods when you were a kid, or what were you doing when you were younger?
Yeah, I had my share of tree houses around the woods at home, and there wasn't a hockey program here. Always played baseball. Baseball was our family passion. We all, my mom and dad were our biggest fans, and my older brother played baseball. My younger brother played baseball. That was just something that we did as a family a lot.
Yeah.
But basketball in high school, I wasn't very good, so I didn't really make the grade with basketball. But we had no hockey program, no football program. That all came later.
Yeah.
So I probably would have gotten involved in it had they had that. Not that I'd have been any good at it, but I kind of grabbed a hold of baseball and softball and stayed with that until I got too old to play it, really, pretty much. Just about 10 years ago, I quit playing ball. So.
Did you have a dream of being a professional baseball player, or?
Doesn't every little boy want to
Yeah.
be a professional some form of sports if they're involved in sports? Yeah, my dad was pretty much my inspiration because he was really good.
Yeah.
And coming from New York, he was quite a Yankees fan.
Okay, I was going to ask you that next.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So he kind of pushed that on us a little bit, and kind of encouraged us to play baseball because that was his favorite too.
Yeah.
But he was really good. He even played up until about 10 years ago. So
do you still like going to the games and every summer here when the Gold Panthers are in?
Yeah, I've kind of lost a lot of the drive for it, but I love professional sports, and I like watching that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like I have the time anymore to do a lot of those things that we did when we were kids, unfortunately.
So how was it going to high school? Did you know our dad, Joe File, when you went there?
Yeah, I did. I knew of him. I didn't know him real well, but not until actually we really started trucking together did I really know him and your Uncle John. And I think I'm in between their two ages. I'm older than John and younger than your dad, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're 2 years younger than our dad. You probably would have been our Uncle Dan's age, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know
54,
him,
yeah.
but I knew John and your dad.
Yeah.
And then through, I think somehow through Camp Laiwa, I think I remember through the church knowing your family a little bit.
Yeah, they were the North Pole kids, so.
Yeah. And there was quite a rivalry between North Pole and Fairbanks back then too. So
They had a car, but it's funny to think about how, everybody's got to have a car nowadays, and you guys didn't even have a car growing up. And they had one car for 6 kids and all their family. It's funny how things have changed that way, but
yeah, we were only without transportation for I think 3 or 4 years, and it wasn't really a big deal because everybody we knew had vehicles. So if other than my dad going to work and us walking to school, you've heard the old stories of, I walked so far to go to school, but yeah, when we were kids, we spent plenty of time walking back and forth.
there probably wasn't too many times that you didn't go to school or your dad didn't go to work because it was cold, huh?
There was no such thing as not going to school or going to work. Now they shut the schools down if it gets too cold or snows too much or something, but that didn't happen back then.
Yeah, you're walking. It don't matter the weather.
Yeah, and it wasn't that far, so it wasn't that big a deal.
You guys would walk in 40, 50 below to school probably too, huh?
I don't really remember what the bottom temperature was, but I don't ever remember not having to go to school.
Yeah.
The only times I really didn't go was there was along the way we had a neighbor, the Crab family, and Mrs. Crab always had just an incredible garden, and I love vegetables, so I'd get distracted sometimes on the way and wouldn't show up for school, and they'd go looking for me and make some phone calls. Of course, we did have a phone, and Mrs. Crab would bust me in the water barrel cleaning off some carrots or in the garden or something like that, and send me on my way to school.
Was she upset when she caught you, or
several times because I did it a lot,
Yeah.
but I couldn't walk by without stealing some carrots or radishes or something.
Yeah.
That was in the summertime, and we went to school. Our school was not always just in the wintertime here.
Yeah.
It was in the fall time. School always started the first part of August back when I was a little kid, so
Yeah.
the gardens were still
pretty
right
good.
at their prime. But
So they didn't really have to worry about moose getting into their gardens. They just had to worry about John Sauers getting in there.
we had our share of moose in the garden. Yeah, I grew up on College Road, and it wasn't a lot of houses at that time back then. So
That probably was almost in the middle of nowhere back then, huh? College Road?
yeah, at the time. Yeah, now it's just all houses, but I drive by the house every once in a while that I grew up in.
That's fun thinking about growing up like that. I miss those gardens.
Well, you the neighborhoods you grow up in, where your tree houses were, and you can't drive by without really looking at different things that you remember when you were a kid. I don't have the greatest memory, and my childhood was so incredible. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I was pretty fortunate, pretty blessed.
So you've always, your parents never moved around. They're just always in Fairbanks?
Always in Fairbanks. Yeah, they became snowbirds later in my life, and they lived in Hawaii for a while, and then they moved to Arizona in the wintertime, and then they'd come home in the summer. They always maintained a home here in the summer.
It makes me wonder what you had for winter gear back then, because it wasn't. My grandma always made our winter gear for us.
Well, I had a little Eskimo coat, and when I was little, and going through pictures once in a while, I see pictures of me when I was real little in a little Eskimo coat with a fur ruff on it and little mucklucks. I look like a little Eskimo kid. But
I got the same pictures.
yeah, I'm sure we do. Well, that's what we had back then, or military surplus stuff, or you got by with whatever you got by with. Hand-me-downs from my older brother, and yeah, and that was good. You know, now I wouldn't trade any of that for anything. I look back on it now and think how lucky I was, you know.
Yeah.
But at the time, I always wanted my own new stuff.
So when you turned 16, did you start driving?
Actually, I was driving before I was 16.
Okay.
When I was 13 years old, I went to work at Sourdough, and I had a paper route before that. And when I was 13, Leo Schlofelt, the owners now, their great grandpa and grandpa, I used to go over. He had a couple dogs, and I was called on to go clean up his yard all the time. That was my part-time job, and then I started doing household goods, and then I had an opportunity to go north on a mission for a matter of days, and for Tennessee Miller, and I did that, and then I was doing household goods, and then Bill Rogie and George O'Leary kind of gave me a break one day and decided to let me drive out to Eielson in one of their old Studebaker trucks, and that was almost a disaster.
And that was when you were 13?
No. I was 15, I think, at the time when I started doing that.
But you started driving when you were 13.
I was shoveling dog poop at
Okay.
13.
Okay.
And then I was the yard boy over at Sourdough on 12th Avenue right after that, and, you know, bringing trucks in and out of the garage and kind of grinding gears around the yard. And then I got to help out I got a union job when I just turned 16 as a Teamster. And that was, at the time, there was no age limit, so I got in the Teamsters when I was 16 and took an in-house call to do household goods. Sourdough didn't have a line board. We didn't have any long-haul trucking at the time, except George O'Leary always went to Circle with a tanker. And then I did that through most of high school, and then when I got out of high school, I was headed for Vietnam, and a couple buddies of mine and we decided, you know, if we're all going to end up overseas in Vietnam, let's go have fun for a year first. So the pipeline hadn't started yet, and it was just, you know, everybody was talking about it. We knew it was coming, but nobody really knew what it was going to entail. So we all there was three of us. We bought BMW motorcycles and decided we were going to drive around the world. And so we did. And while we were gone, Nixon stopped the draft. So then, So then it was party on, you know. And then we weren't coming back right away at this point. So
yeah. So did you guys get those motorcycles in Alaska?
We picked them up in Munich, Germany.
Okay.
We ordered them from George Ron here in Fairbanks. He was my neighbor.
Okay.
And I hung out over at his shop a lot. You know, I was kind of a motorhead at the time, and picked up our bikes over there. I still have mine.
Wow. So you picked them up in Munich, Germany?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we drove down through Africa and all over the place. And
really?
It was quite a college education for me.
And that was in like the early 70s?
That was in 72.
So that must have been something.
Yeah, I mean, what 18-year-old kid drives a motorcycle? My parents were terrified, and so were my two buddies, and of course we really relied on each other during this trip. I mean, we were all kids, and I'd never let my 18-year-old son go do something like that. Now it'd be unheard of. But we didn't get hurt. You know, we had a great time, and money went a lot further back then than it does now too. So yeah, it was, instead of going to college, that was kind of my education. I wouldn't trade that for anything now. It was great. And then when we got back, Sourdough Freight Lines was in the process of being sold, that was all part of Sourdough Express's. They had a lot of holdings here at the time, and but they were selling the freight lines to Baltrush and Eddie O'Leary and Don Spafford, and they started hauling fuel to build the haul road from Prudhoe south and Fairbanks north, and I went with the sale. So I started trucking this right when they, and that was at the beginning of '73.
Okay. Can I stop you right there just for the motorcycle junkies? What type of B&W bike was this?
R75.5.
Okay. And how much horsepower is that then?
Oh, gosh. I think they were like 65, 70 horsepower at the time. Yeah. Not very much. But we had Alyeska or Bust written on the back of it, and went through our share of tires, and never really had any mechanical problems with any of the three bikes. And Mark, one of the fellows that was with us, he disappeared when we were in Spain, in Barcelona one night. We figured he just found a girlfriend or something, and he went out and partied too hard, and he never came back. And through correspondence with my parents, of course, we didn't have cell phones back then, so everything was through postcards and long-distance phone calls through the embassy. And I found out that he went down to the U.S. Embassy in Barcelona and joined the U.S. Navy, and shipped out and flew home, joined the nuclear submarine division. And we found that out when we got back, and we actually, when we were driving back up through the United States, we came up through San Diego, and here he was in nuclear school.
He never said a word?
Never said a word to us. He figured we'd figure it out. And they must have had some pretty good liquor back then, but because he was a brilliant guy, and then he became a dentist, but he's passed away since then. But the other fellow was Dave May. He's a local guy. He's a gold miner now in Fairbanks, but we stay in close touch still.
So you went with Dave May?
Yeah. Do you know Dave? Polar Mine.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
It's the same May that I know, I think.
We went to church with some Mays, and I'm trying to remember which ones they were.
Well, there was Dan, Debbie, Donna, and Darlene.
It was one of them.
Dawn. Yeah.
Well, I know Nathan May. He's
Nathan is Dan's son.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's helping out at the mine full time now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah, he good dude. Beautiful family too.
They're wonderful people. I grew up with them, so
yeah.
It was Don and Ruth May and Don and Ruth Sauer, so from the Denali Bible Chapel.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
So yeah, they're great people. Real good, real close friends, family friends.
So was Dan one of the ones that went with you?
Dave.
Or Dave, sorry.
Dave's the oldest one.
Dave's the one that went on that motorcycle trip.
Yeah. And
okay.
He and I are the same age.
Okay.
So.
That's right.
Yeah, and then when the Sourdough Freight Line started, we were running fuel from Anchorage to Fairbanks, and they just opened the Parks Highway. Sometimes we had to go all the way around through Glen Allen, but
what was that, 67, 68 when they finally got that bridge finished?
Yeah,
right there in Unana.
Yeah. That was I believe it was 68.
Yeah, okay.
Is when they finished that, but we could drive all the way through, but it wasn't paved all the way to Anchorage.
Okay.
At that time,
yeah,
there was still a long stretch of gravel road, but they got it all done and made it a whole lot easier on us because we were running pretty hard back and forth.
So when you came back from your motorcycle adventures, Sourdough pretty much just said, "Hey, come on back."
No, Sourdough Freight Lines was just starting up.
Oh, okay.
And I worked there for about a year and a half. Just hauling fuel.
Yeah.
And started hauling pipe, 80-foot pipe at the time. And then Sourdough Express started a line board, and as soon as they started a line board in early 75, I went back over there.
Okay. So you were hauling the pipeline pipe.
Yeah. Yeah.
With those Those dollies, those 3-axle dollies,
Those
right?
self-steering
Yeah.
suicide dollies. Yeah.
How was that?
I wasn't a fan of the pipe dollies. I didn't really want to have much to do with the long pipe.
Yeah.
I hauled my share of it, saw a lot of accidents, and they had a mind of their own, those pipe dollies did. And sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. I never had any issues with it. Fortunately, I was one of the lucky ones. But
So you never had one go in the ditch on you or anything like that?
I had one try and drive off the road one
Yeah.
time, and I felt the truck kind of picking up in the air on my side, and then it drove back on the road. But, I mean, if you just jerk the steering wheel, they started to follow you, and they didn't react as quick as your eyes did. But
Okay.
they kind of, and they were heavy. So when they did, if they went over the crown of the road or off the ditch side, they were hard to recover with. And that's when they started thinking, well, maybe these aren't going to work out. But a lot of the companies had them. You know, Kodiak had them, Muckluck had them, Weaver Brothers had them, Frontier had them, Sourdough Freight Lines had a few of them, but I pretty much stayed under a tanker most of my career at Sourdough Freight Lines.
Yeah.
And then went to dry freight and whatever. And we had a tanker fleet at Sourdough Express. So
So when you first started hauling that long pipe, was that coming out at Anchorage the first time, or
no, that's most of that stuff come off the railroad here in Fairbanks or else out of Valdez.
Okay.
Mostly out of Fairbanks. We hauled a lot of it down towards Valdez,
Okay.
but most of it come off the rail.
Yeah. So how was that driving on the Kamikaze Trail back then, the old Elliott?
Nothing like it is today.
Yeah.
You know, there's memories of the Dalton Highway that people just, you know, back then everybody had crossover lines and maxi cans and that hung down, and you're driving through mud so deep that, you know, it's up to the axles and you're tearing air equip lines off and everything. Having to chain up in mud axle deep is not fun. And I've actually been pulled down stormy in the mud. The ruts were so deep, chained up just to get to the bottom of the hill, downhill.
Wow.
You know, now if there's a pothole in the hill, people are going to complain about it. But it was a whole different world back then. I mean, we didn't have the horsepower. You didn't have the equipment. Everything was biscuit suspension or Hendrickson extended leaf. You didn't have the air ride, and
Yeah.
but the difference between back then and now too was it didn't matter what color your truck was. We all worked the same job,
Yeah.
and it was a very family oriented business at the time. I mean, I might be a Sauer, you might be a File, but back then everybody was brothers. And if someone was stopped on the side of the road just to go to the bathroom, you know, you'd stop to make sure they were okay, just thinking maybe they were broke down or something. You never passed anybody if they had a flat tire.
I was just kind of laughing there because I was thinking, hey, you need an extra leaf of toilet paper or a square of toilet paper?
You know, I mean, you know, now you don't see too many guys that are packing spare tires.
Yeah.
You know, then everything was split rim, and of course that's what gave a lot of guys flat tires was the split rims that come loose and take out the inside tire. But yeah, it was a different world back then. No guardrails, no delineators. The maintenance on the road at times, there was, you know, we hear now and we see that there's a lack of maintenance sometimes on the road, but back then there was times where it was like unbelievable. I mean, it just unbelievable.
Well, back then, wasn't Alyeska in charge of doing the road maintenance?
Not to begin with.
Okay.
No, they took over once the pipeline was built.
Okay, so they had
and being built. But before that, the construction of the Dalton Highway was, you know, Green Construction, Burgess Construction, you know, Gem Company and Fluor and Bechtel, and some of the older companies that were in charge of sections of the road. Everybody had a section of the road. Peter Kiewit and but once they took over the road, it got maintained pretty good. It got better and better and better and better and better till the state took over, and they do what they can, and they've done an incredible job since then. But which was another part of my career. But
so you worked for the state doing maintenance up there.
Well, I drove truck, and then I started buying my own trucks, and I had a few trucks, and I did that I was at Sourdough for 37 years, and then...
So what was your first truck?
It was a 1972 Kenworth with a 350 in it.
What color was that truck?
Maroon.
Okay.
It had a 5 and 4 in it.
Nice.
And my first new truck was a 81 Pete. Was when I bought my first new truck. And that had a 6 and 4 air shift, 1241D Spicer in it, with air ride.
What color was that truck?
Dark blue with my own paint scheme on it. I went down to Seattle and brought that back. And
that must have been pretty cool, huh?
At 27 years old, that was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool thing. And it was... I walked into the shop at PACCAR down there, and I saw the truck, they were just putting the lines on it and whatnot, and I was all charged up. That was a big highlight of my life. And worked hard to save enough money for a down payment. And when I walked in there, they wanted to know where my dad was at. And I said, what do you mean my dad? And they said, well, isn't this his truck? I said, no, that's my truck. They couldn't quite understand how.
So
but
you looked
during
pretty young.
During the pipeline, it being a union job, you were, I had enough hours to retire out of the Teamsters Union at 27 years old. But I didn't really work those hours. That was part of our contract. We got paid just a lot of money to go north of the Yukon River. And what would take you 12 hours to turn around to go to the river and back, you got paid for 18, and 10 of it was time and a half. So they added up quick. So I got the hours for retirement, and everybody did. Everything was union then. There was no non-union at the time. So I picked up the truck in PACCAR and drove it to Alaska, and I got to the Fraser, when I got into Canada, it was wintertime when I was bringing it up, and I was grinding gears and missing gears, and that air shift Browning at 6 and 4, I'm used to a set of sticks, and I like the sticks, but a set of boxes. And when I got to the Caziar Highway, I was ready to turn around and take it back, because I could have swore there was something wrong with that, but I kept going, and by the time I got to Fairbanks, I thought I had it pretty well down. So
you were just bobtailing back?
No, I brought a load back.
Okay.
I brought a load back up the highway, a load of it was actually a load of irrigation pipe for a farmer out at Salcha.
Oh, nice.
So it was a light load, but it was a paying load. So.
Yeah, that's good.
So it worked out pretty good.
So did you buy a trailer down there too?
No, I brought one of Sourdough trailers back.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, and then I intercamped for a long time, just back and forth from the pump stations, and we had a contract intercamp, and they called it, and most of the loads came out of Pump 6, or actually all the fracking plants up and down the highway, and they went everywhere, all the way down to Tonsina Camp.
So what was the first year you went all the way to Prudhoe? Was that 74 or 75 or?
The first year I went all the way to Prudhoe would have been from Fairbanks to Prudhoe after we tied in the road. I ran from Prudhoe south all the way to almost to Dietrich, actually just the side of Chandeleur Shelf, and then from Fairbanks north quite a bit. And then when they intertied, I think my first load was the end of 74.
Okay.
And the first trip I made was with Bill Rogie. We both had trucks. I don't know if you know Bill Rogie. You know the name, I'm sure.
Well, Aaron knows everybody, but I'm still meeting people.
Yeah, he was related to Sourdough Express.
Yeah.
And
can you tilt that mic up just a little bit there? There you go.
Yeah, so he had he kind of took me under his wing and took me up there, and the first checkpoint was at Dietrich. Actually right at 209 mile, or right by the outhouse there at 205, 206 mile. And we pulled into the checkpoint, and I thought we had to be close to Prudhoe Bay. I mean, it was it was a long trip, and it was cold. Gosh, it was cold out. So when we got in the checkpoint, they checked all our gear. Then you had to go through an inspection with. You had to have your Arctic gear, you had to have a CB radio, you had to have a first aid kit, blah, 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 all this stuff, emergency stuff. And they checked all my stuff out, and they said, well, you're good to go. And I said, well, how much farther is Prudhoe Bay? And I was only halfway there. I was like, had no clue what mile we were at. There was no mileage signs or anything. And Bill laughed at me. He says, you're not even halfway, John. So... But that was my first trip all the way up.
Was that your first trip up Adigan Pass too, or no?
In a truck, yeah.
Okay.
No, because we'd been intercamping from there.
Oh, okay.
But for some reason, it was nighttime, and I knew I was close, but I didn't know I was only at Dietrich at the time. I figured this checkpoint was a little bit further on. And
so did any of these hills intimidate you right at first when you went up them?
Every one of them. I was always sucking the seat cushion on the way up the hills. I mean, it was.
So like 1 mile, you're like, oh man.
1 mile never really bothered me. 2 mile was always on my mind, and just climbing up out of Tullavana up over 64 mile was. You had to sit up and pay attention, and then Happy Man was probably one of my biggest nightmares. Coming home, it was always terrifying to me.
Yeah, talking about that Tullavana hill, that's you could still see part of that actually went up that hill right there where the cut was, right?
Yes, yeah, you can. As soon as you cross Tullavana Bridge, you look up and you can see it kind of parallel work its way up the hill, and then it winds around and then down into Live and Good Camp.
Yeah,
Live and Good proper there in the mining district. And
how about Live and Good Hill coming home? I bet that was fun, huh?
Live and Good Hill was, if it was raining or snowing, it was. I've had to stop and back down because I met somebody in some of the switchbacks, and whether it was my fault or their fault, it didn't matter. You just had to do it, and it happened a lot, especially if a load of pipe was coming down the hill.
Yeah.
It could take hours before they got to the bottom if they had a problem or whatever. You just had to wait it out.
And those long loads of pipe, they didn't have pilot cars back then, right?
No, there was no pilot cars back then.
Yeah.
That all came. Pilot cars all came in the 80s.
Yeah.
From there on, pretty much, and that back then that was not a public road either. It was strictly an industrial road, so you didn't have public traffic to deal with, and that part of the danger. Meeting some idiot who didn't know where he was, or that all came later.
Yeah.
Did you still have people going out to Manly though?
Yeah, you'd have people going to Manly and to Minto and whatnot, but the haul road itself really didn't start until you got to 1 mile, and that was a 90-degree corner to go up 1 mile.
Yeah, you can still see the old road there.
Yeah, that came. That bypass came in the early 80s, mid 80s.
And the road probably went that way because it just used to go to Manly. So,
correct.
So that's probably why they brought it down through there in that loop and then brought it up like that. Because it looks natural. If the haul road wasn't there, it looks like, oh yeah, that's going to, that's the
Well, if
Manly
you
road.
ever fly over that area, which when I was working for DOT, we flew back and forth to work a lot. So I got to see changes in the road that you can't see from the ground, even some of the switchbacks around 24 and 25 mile on the Elliott. They go way back in, and kind of hairpin back out, and now they're actually grown up with trees and whatnot. But the bypass at Live and Good, well, from Tullivanna, they went from Tullivanna to Live and Good, and then the bypass from Live and Good directly to where you can take a run at 1 mile, and you got to take a left on the Minto Manly turnoff. Well, that was all straight right there.
Yeah.
And you'd take a right to go up 1 mile, and there was always issues, people coming down and not being able to make that corner at the bottom, and
Going off in the ditch right there.
yeah, that happened a lot.
So would you guys chain up right there just before you made that right?
No, usually at Live and Good we
Okay.
chain up.
Chain up.
Yeah, and we chained up all the time.
Yeah.
You'd have to chain up. That's
just what you guys did back then.
it's just
'cause
what you had to do to
you
make
guys didn't
it.
have lockers. All you had was a power divider, really, right?
We never had lockers.
Yeah.
You know, Detroit came out with lockers in 80 and 79 and 80, I think it was. And yeah, I never had lock. I had a locker in my front axle with my new truck, but other than that, we didn't have lockers then.
So did you go up the haul road in a pickup first, or was it a big truck?
The first time I was ever on the haul road was in a big truck.
Okay. And so did you have guys telling you, okay, these are the hills you gotta keep your eyes
Oh,
open
yeah.
for? Okay.
Oh yeah, and you know, some of the old timers that were there from day one. I mean, I was there pretty much from day one, but you know, they were my mentors. I mean, they taught me how to drive, and so I paid attention to them.
Yeah.
You know, I had been north of Live and Good all the way up to Sagwan when I was a kid, on the Hickle Highway,
Yeah.
and just one time, but that wasn't road related. That was a whole different experience.
Yeah, we can go into that a little later if you want. But let's get back over to Happy Man. So what was that like when you first time going off Happy Man?
I spent a lot of hours on top of Happy Man polishing my dash, waiting to go down because someone was spun out coming up. I mean, you leave town, you're gung-ho, you're just, you know, the adrenaline levels maxed out because you're on the haul road, and here's a lineup of trucks, and you're going to be there for 10, 12 hours until Motor Inn came down with Rudy and Chuck Vogt with the wreckers to get some guy up Happy Man. And coming back the other direction, you're sitting on the edge of your seat when you cross the Hess Creek Bridge. And you're up over the little rise, and you're just building momentum, and you come around the quarry, and you're looking up there, and you know that's where you got to go, and it's 100 feet on both sides. I never went over the edge coming backwards off that hill, but I have slid down that hill. And it's
That's a
definitely
scary
an
feeling, huh?
adrenaline rush.
Oh, yeah.
But
How far backwards have you slid coming down that hill?
that hill there, I've slid almost down to the quarry from the top, just right as you're starting into the corner on top.
Yeah.
But I was in the crown of the road, and I was empty, and I probably missed a gear. I don't even remember what my problem was. Probably trying to shift too quick or
Yeah.
something. And
So for all the people that don't drive truck up there, why was that hill called Happy Man?
if you look at it from the air, it looks like a face with a smile.
Okay.
And that's the only thing that I can think of is why it's called Happy Man, because it's a big horseshoe, the valley where the road goes. And why they built the road like that, I have a friend of mine in Fairbanks. His name's George Dalton. His dad was one of the chief engineers on the Dalton Highway, and that's why it was named the Dalton Highway. And he told me, George's dad told me when I was younger, that the reason why they called it the Dalton Highway was because it was supposed to be a scenic route. Even though it wasn't open to the public, it was supposed to be a scenic route. Well, the Taps, which is from Live and Good to the Yukon, that's part of the Dalton Highway now. We used to just always call it the Taps. And so Happy Man pretty much followed the ridge line all the way. You know, they stayed on top of the ridges as much as they could. If you look at the taps now, that's all on top of the ridges. It's running right on the peak of both sides. And like north of the Yukon River, I mean, they could have easily followed the Hickle Highway and they wouldn't have had so many hills. But then they would have had drifting issues. So like Beaver Slide, they could have easily come up Fish Creek and crossed and over to the Koyukuk and followed it up through Four Corners.
So did he tell you that was a concern? That's why they probably took that into consideration, thinking drifting.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
And then I've heard a lot of people say they built that highway the way they did because the way the pipeline has to go up the hill and then come down, it's to slow the flow. I don't know if that's...
Well, if you notice on the pipeline all the little zigzags, you often wonder, why did they make a corner right there, and why did they put that bend in the pipe and everything? And that was for expansion, for weather expansion, and to slow and to maintain the speed of the oil flow and whatnot. Why there's so many, I don't know. But that's why they built the road the way they did, was access to the pipeline. But they can still, there's places where the pipeline's a long ways from the road.
Yeah.
But that in general, that's probably why I think they did it like that. Plus the engineering was cheaper. They didn't have to deal with the swamp down below, and what's underneath that road when we built the road it's obvious to me why the road falls apart all the time, because there's a lot of garbage underneath that road through swamps that nobody builds a road through that stuff, but we did. And
now they go around Happy Man because there was wasn't there fatalities on that
There's
hill too?
been a lot of accidents on Happy Man Hill. I mean, all the 48-inch pipe, all the 80-foot pipe came down Happy Man Hill. That was all done before they did the bypass. The bypass isn't really that old. We ran Happy Man was active. Happy Man was active until the late 80s, early 90s.
I think it was about 93 when they opened that bypass.
Yeah, and that was made a huge difference. I mean, it shortened the road. It was a lot quicker and a lot less problems for everybody. I mean, there's people running the road right now. You mentioned Happy Man, and they say, "Oh, we've heard of it, but we've never been over it." I wish they still had Happy Man, because there'd be a lot of idiots that wouldn't be driving up there.
So that bottom section of Happy Man, was that called Happy Jack? I've heard that before.
It may have been. I don't recollect that. You mean up to the quarry?
Yeah, just the bottom before the quarry. Was that called Happy Jack? Or?
That I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
There's been a lot of different names on that road that people have named different hills, different areas that were like just as an example, the roller coaster. The roller coaster never used to be called the roller coaster. That was O'Shit Hill.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, at the very beginning of the pipeline, that was always called O'Shit Hill. You drop off of there, and it was obvious why it was called that. But
did they have signs out for these hills? And these?
No, not always.
That was just what people told each other. Yeah, that's what that's called.
Yeah, and like Mackey Hill, everybody says, "Oh, that was named after Dick Mackey." No, that was called Mackey prior to Dick. I mean, during the pipeline.
We did an interview with Mike Scheidler, and he said the first time he went up there was a sign on Mackey that said Prayer Hill.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah,
I don't know.
Scheidler, he was running up there in the 70s.
Yeah,
so yeah, and a lot of them have just acquired names here and there for different purposes. On the north end oil spill and the ice cut. Of course, the ice cut that's a whole different hill than when it was back in the pipeline too. So
yeah, used to be a lot steeper on the ice cut back when they were building the pipeline.
Well, it was a double level. It was a stair step. The ice cut was, and the reason why it's where it is right now is because of the Peregrine Falcon Reserve.
Yeah,
but it used to be you'd drop off oil spill and you're building a fire all the way to the ice cut, because if you can't roll up over that first step, which was about halfway, because then it levels out, and then you're gear bound. You know you're gonna back way out of it just to catch up with your gear, and then it's hard to make that last half a hill, and that caused a lot of problems. I mean, everybody had trouble on that. And so then they made it one gradual, real steep climb up the ice cut, but that was a long time ago.
And then oil spill. Do you know the story behind that?
Yeah, there was a tanker that went in the ditch, or I think he just went backwards, and I think it laid over on the road, if I remember right, and spilled some fuel, so they called it oil spill. Simple one like that. 117 was for obvious reasons. Toolik was Toolik Lake. Galbraith was Galbraith Lake. The Koyukuk was always one of my worst nightmares too. that one, I was never a fan of the ice cut. I mean of the Koyukuk.
Has that hill changed much since they built it? It's pretty much been the same.
It's been the same hill since day one.
Yeah.
It's still got the same rocks in the middle of it and the same mud that's on it. Now they have guardrails on it. But
didn't used to have guardrails.
No guardrails. We didn't have guardrails anywhere. No delineators anywhere.
Wow.
On the north end, you'd feel your way to Prudhoe Bay, just flat. And if it's blowing, it was like, you go ahead, I'll follow you.
Yeah.
But
so the Koyukuk, you guys would call that the south side and the north side too,
correct.
Right? Because it's that whole hill. That's why they called it the Koyukuk.
Yeah, a lot of people call the north side Chapman Hill now because Chapman Lake is right there.
Okay.
But that was always the Koyukuk north and south side.
Yeah.
I've heard other people call it different things, but that's all I knew about it.
That's always been an issue then throughout the years, people renaming hills, it sounds like.
There's been a lot of that. Yeah, I've heard people call different hills different names that I don't remember that ever being called down. Maybe it was, I just don't remember it.
Okay.
I could tell you what mile everything was at or how long it would take to get there on a given day, but for the most part, I don't remember a lot of those new names that have come up.
But Sand Hill's always been Sand Hill.
Sand Hill's always been Sand Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first. Yeah, that I have memories of Sand Hill with my new truck.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was horrible. Yeah, I had. It was the first trip in my new truck, my '81 Pete that I brought back from Seattle. And there was me and there was a group of us at Sourdough that always ran together pretty much. There was me and Smallwood and Hippie and Dwayne Halden. And anyway, we're headed north and we get to the Yukon River, and there was a checkpoint at the Yukon River. They've moved the checkpoints. There's been like 5 or 6 of them in different places through the years. And there were a couple Canadians that were wearing chains, snowing like crazy out. It was snowing hard. Well, shoot, I had a new truck, I don't need chains, And I really honestly never ran chains unless I spun out or unless it was, the temperature was just wrong. But
and that's the truck you had the one locker in the front, driver?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we get to the Yukon River, and we're giving these Canadians a hard time about, what are you wearing chains for? You're leaving crosslinks all over the road. There's nothing left of your chains. You're wearing them out. Put them on at the bottom of the hill and go up the hill and take them off. Oh, no. You guys are crazy to not have chains on. Well, we never had any issues from Fairbanks to the river. Happy Man, 1 and 2, 3 mile, and the old 42, 43 mile up on the taps, never an issue, or we hadn't had any problems. I happened to be out front when we left the Yukon River. We want to get ahead of these Canadians because they're going to have trouble. Well, Aaron knows exactly where I'm going with this, so we get pulled 12 mile, no problem, and yeah, it's good. Everybody's doing fine. Snowing like crazy. Get to Sand Hill, and I'm taking a run at Sand Hill, and I'm motoring right up there, and I never even came to a stop, and I'm going backwards. I have a tanker, and I'm going backwards faster than I went up the hill, and I'm starting to get sideways in the road, And I'm sliding down this hill, and we had just got done getting out of radio range with these Canadians. And I was giving them a hard time. I was really being mouthy. And, you don't belong here. You bunch of chichacos, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm just a young kid. I'm just a big mouth kid. I'm a stupid, ignorant, big mouth kid. And I come to a stop, and my steering axle's on the southbound ditch side, and pulling a 3-axle tanker. My rear axle's hanging over the northbound shoulder, and I'm sideways, and I don't know what I'm going to do.
You're still on the road, though.
I'm still on the road. But I tell you what, I cleared all the snow off the shoulders all the way down that hill, and I went a long ways down the hill. Here comes one of the other 4 of us that we're all running together, and they're laughing at me, and it's like, what am I going to do, So I put chains on. I didn't have any chains on. I put all my chains on. The only thing that come to mind was, gosh, I hope those Canadians don't show up. Well, I got forward and backwards to where I could jackknife it, and I got straightened out on the road, facing north even. And I backed down to a level spot. Well, here come those Canadians. And they're kind of mouthy because they heard on the radio what was going on, and they said, which one of you guys are the idiot? And I said, well, I am. Well, I had chains on. I didn't take them off till we got to Coalfoot. I was so terrified. But I shut up after that. I didn't give them much guff after that. But
So were the temperatures pretty warm then if it was snowing like that?
it was. My tires were running white, and I thought I knew my truck. I didn't know my truck yet.
Oh.
And that's one thing I learned with trucking is know where you are on the road.
Yeah.
And know your equipment, and drive 2-3 corners ahead of yourself, and just always expect the unexpected. But that snow was, I had to have missed a gear. I mean, it was pilot error. It was my own fault. I probably would have made it had I known my truck a little better than I thought I did.
So back in those days, you guys were using your momentum for most of these hills because you didn't have that power.
Momentum's magic.
Yeah.
Momentum's magic, and you use it. Inertia.
Yeah.
It might give you that extra second or two of hang time that you need to get over a hill without dropping a gear. And yeah, it's a learning experience. But then we didn't have the horsepower that they have now. Now everybody's got 500-600 horsepower, or you're not going to run that road. Back then, I mean, the first truck that I drove north had a 250 Cummins in it.
Wow.
And it was, there's no horsepower in those. I mean, those are highway trucks that we turned into haul road trucks because that's all we had.
Yeah.
And then, of course, everybody that got a 350 is like, whoa. And then you had a big cam 2 at 400, and then it was like, oh, man. And then it went from there on up.
And all these little humps weren't an issue anymore once you started getting that bigger horsepower.
Well, you learn where, if you knew where you were on the road, you knew where to start building a fire in it, and what gear you're going to go over that little hump with. But we didn't have the weight that you have now. Now you guys are all pulling basically 100,000 pounds, grossing 100,000 pounds. Back then it was 88,000 pounds, and you were loaded.
Yeah.
The 2-axle trailers, 40-footers, no 48s, no 43s, and if you had a 270-inch wheelbase truck, you had a long truck. If you had a big sleeper, you way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So those things have changed. Technology, the way it's changed, and I think what gets a lot of people in trouble now is they either don't have a good thermometer, because you guys both know as well as I do, your temperature is huge.
Yep.
Know your truck, know your equipment, and know where you are on the road. Maybe that's the way I drive. I'm not saying that's what everybody should do, but that's the way I've learned to stay out of trouble.
Have you ever had one of those days where you were daydreaming and then you got to the bottom of Mackey or the pass or something? You're like, oh, I need to pick it up here. And you were going slower than you should have been?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I think we've all made mistakes like that where it's like, oh, man, I'm really in trouble. I'm going too slow, or why didn't I grab a gear back there? And
How are they taking care of the roads back then was there sand and things like that? Because it seemed like they're taking really good care of the road in the wintertime anymore.
it's changed. I mean, back then we didn't do much sanding on the roads. We always had snowpack. They didn't cut the road like they do now. There's been a significant improvement on the road for the last 50 years. I mean, it's every year there's improvements. I mean, I'm not a real fan of high float and blacktop on the road. I think because I worked for DOT for a while too, and I have pretty strong feelings about pothole patching and fixing the same spots year after year after year after year where they're paving it and just throwing money away. That's my opinion. But on the other hand, it's, you look at the road from 62 Mile into Prudhoe. It's wonderful now. I mean,
that's nice.
That's such a huge improvement. And, there's places, from Coalfoot to Dietrich, until the road got worn out. After they paved that was a pretty nice stretch of road. So, yeah, there's places where it's been a real advantage, but unless they go and dig the road out and start over and get rid of what we put underneath the road when they built the road. I mean, just as an example, the bottom of the Beaver Slide from there to Fish Creek, there's probably 10 feet of hay and old trees and biodegradables underneath that base that they put down there, and then they pave over the top of it, and they think it's supposed to hold.
Were they doing that, trying to insulate that?
Part of it was insulation in the tundra, in the permafrost, but I think where they had some problems was they cut into the permafrost, and then they put that stuff down. Well, they broke that frost barrier, and then they tried to make up for it was to keep what was left of it frozen. Well, they had already permeated it or perforated it, so that's never going to refreeze because it's too far underneath the ground, and then it just wallers out. And then keep adding material and keep blading it and keep getting the same potholes. You've been driving the road long enough to where the same potholes show up for the last 30, 40 years. I mean, even on, there used to be a layer on top of that to where those potholes those rocks were not exposed. And there's a couple rocks on 117 that in the summertime, when they come down that with a grader, they bounce over that and they're breaking cutting edges all the time because those same boulders were there back in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're painted. Some of them have smiley faces on them now, but that's just bound to happen.
Yeah.
So
1 second here while we turn off our air compressor again.
Okay.
There we go. That happened. That happened last time with who was it? Oh, it was Delta Tom. Yeah. So the pothole patching.
Yeah, that's been a real sore spot for me because it's, I work for DOT as an owner operator, you don't at least I didn't build myself a medical program and a good enough retirement. I wasn't smart enough to do that at the time, so when I sold all my equipment, I wanted to get a medical program. I had some medical issues, and so I went to work for DOT as an operator, and I did that for quite a few years. And
What camps did you work out of?
I was on the roving crew for a while, and then I worked in all the camps, but from Fairbanks north, nothing south. And then I went to Jim River Camp for quite a while. I was there for 9 years. And then, but that's the section that we did most of the high float patching, and seemed to be the area that they concentrated on the most because that was the most in need. And every year we'd be doing this almost to the foot, the same, we'd tear up what was left of the road, and then we'd rebuild it, just doing high float pothole patching. And temperature, it's hard to fix a road when you're using oil and it's freezing outside. It just doesn't want to set up right sometimes.
Yeah.
They did their best, and they're still trying to make it better every year, and some of it holds up pretty good, but some of those potholes just, when they're a foot deep,
They hurt.
Has the Beaver Slide always had those humps change every summer and winter going down it, or was...
Pretty much has always been those soft spots. In the early 2000s, the Japanese came up with a product that they wanted us to try on the Dalton Highway. It was a matting material. And you've probably noticed as soon as you break off the top of the Beaver Slide, I don't know, 200-300 yards, about 100 yards down the hill on the left-hand side, there's a box. Off the road, up in the tundra, there's a box with some cables that go to it. That is a control computer, solar-powered computer that records weights. And this is a product, it's a matting material that's made for permafrost areas. So we dug down 3 to 4 feet, took it out of the Beaver Slide, laid out all this material, and then put it back in. Well, it was mud when it was done, and you can't compact mud. It has to be pretty dry. Well, then they brought in this purple mud from 7 Mile to cap it with, which turns to slime, and it's slick when it's wet. I mean, it sets up like concrete when it's dry. You guys know that in the 7 Mile area, that's what the whole road is made of. Mm-hmm. When they water and blade it, I mean, they saturate it to where you think, why are they turning it to mud? Why are you using so much water? But when it sets up nice. Well, they capped this section of the Beaver Slide right above where those first first sinkholes are. And they went down to the sinkholes, and this was supposed to eliminate any sinkholes from then on. If this worked, they were going to do the whole Beaver Slide. It didn't work. So they gave up on the idea of going all the way to the bottom, which it probably would have helped, but and we put some culverts in the Beaver Slide too, which to this day, there's always a bump on those culverts, mostly down by tree line next to the birch tree. But the process of rebuilding that section of road all the time, it's hard to get rid of those, especially where the culverts are, because it's just not compacted properly.
It seems like all over Alaska, anytime there's a culvert, you're going to have some kind of dip or hump.
Yeah.
There, and I think that's just how it is when you're cutting into the permafrost. Like you said, when you disturb that ground, you're going to have issues. But
yeah, once you dig into it, I've actually dug up myself with an excavator at the bottom of the beaver slide between tree line and the pull-off at the very bottom in the northbound lane. I've gone 17 feet deep digging out muck and backfilling it with gravel and compacting it. And some of those have held up to this day. I mean, every time I drive over it, I have a mental note, is this one falling apart? No, this one's actually holding up, and it's been years. But you can't do that to the whole road unless you're going to start completely over.
Yeah, it would take forever.
And unfortunately, when they built the road at the bottom, it was pretty fast construction site. I mean, this construction to build the road was push, push, push. And it was only a temporary road. It was the Dalton Highway was only designed for a 20-year road. And here we're 50 years. And they patch it, and they fix it, and they patch it. And it's improved, don't get me wrong. I'm amazed how nice it is now compared to what it used to be.
Do you think they should pave like sections like south of Chandelar to Dietrich, or in the river valleys? Would that be better through there? Because I know that gets really muddy there when it rains. I
am not an engineer. I hate to say that would be better because that would just be my own opinion.
Yeah.
But there's sections that I think I wish they'd just. When I left DOT, I wanted to take a dozer and rip up a lot of high float.
Yeah.
I wanted to start at Baker's and go from there north and tear all that section up all the way over to the Beaver Slide and go back to cutting edges and watering it. And if they, the cutting edges and the man hours and the equipment time, that's all factored into their budget. So they're already paying for that stuff. Sometimes I'm annoyed because you don't see the equipment out there working sometimes when I personally think it should be, but, we're on the clock, let us go do our job. But sometimes I think that it would be cost effective to go back to that gravel and watering if they'd let us, if we'd get out there and work.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, for whatever reason, either the equipment's broke down or there's short man hours or whatnot. But there's places where I would have never believed that 62 mile into Prudhoe Bay would be as nice as it is today.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent days going from 62 mile to Prudhoe Bay at 5 mile an hour trying to dodge potholes, and you couldn't miss them. You had to go through them. I would have never believed that would be so nice as it is now. You saw it when it was at its worst.
Yep.
And now you've seen it when it's at its best.
It's amazing.
And, I would have bet against that back in the day, that, this will never happen.
And it's raised quite a bit now.
A lot, yeah. They've done a remarkable job. And a lot of improvements in different sections. Every section has good spots and bad spots. And
well, like you were talking about earlier with Stormy, I've heard Dad talk about 6 foot deep mud on one side. You had to use the one lane just to get up the hill.
Oh yeah, if you could, and you couldn't get up the hill unless you got hooked onto a dozer.
Yeah,
I've been pulled over a lot of these hills. Chandelar, I don't know how many times I got pulled up Chandelar back in the day when it was so muddy. It didn't matter how many sets of chains you had on. You were not getting over that hill without a pole. Or coming back down, seeing equipment that's sliding, heavy duty equipment, dozers and rock trucks coming off. The Gobbler's Knob used to be that way. It was so bad. Why didn't they just go around the hill? Why did they go up over the top of that? I don't understand why they did what they did sometimes. But I'm not an engineer. I'm just a truck driver. So to second guess them sometimes got me into trouble, and my mouth got me into a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
with stuff like that too. But working for the state, I questioned, why am I here? Why am I working for the state? Our job's to maintain the road. And for the most part, we're supposed to be out there maintaining the road. Whether it's right or wrong, we just did whatever we could to help out. But being a truck driver, there's certain places where I'd go out and sand, or I'd blade where, they want to leave hard pack on the road. Well, if you leave hardpack on the road and you sand it, don't let that sand get buried with snow and scuff it up and bring it to the surface, so they don't need chains. And then sometimes they had the thought, well, let the truck drivers chain up. Well, that wasn't the right way to go, in my opinion. So
It was nice when you were there, man. It was, and you could set your watch by you too. I remember I used to leave at 2:00 in the morning a lot of times, and you'd just be coming off the knob. It's like, man, it's like you're almost planning around your schedule.
yeah, Gary Healy used to set his, I could meet him and Scheidler in different places sometimes, and I would look at the clock and it was always about the same time, But yeah, I enjoyed my job working for the state if they just let me do my thing.
Did you do much grading on Adigan Pass?
No.
Okay.
Adigan wasn't one of my hills that I spent I did when I was on the roving crew, but Adigan was not, Gino, and leave that for the pros, the guys that knew that section of road. Most of my career with DOT was projects, when we were doing project culvert replacement in the 70-mile flats after the flood, or my hills were the Beaver Slide and the Knob and Stormy and Finger Mountain.
Now, you don't have to answer this next question I'm going to ask you, but, it could just be your opinion and my opinion, but I ran heavy equipment for a while at the university, and it was always detail, get everything, get all the snow off. When we started getting more and more freezing rain, that became an issue. And it's like, well, now we're fighting the ice with salt. But sometimes they'd say just pull the snow back onto the sidewalks and the road. Let that absorb it. And then I don't know if you were here in 21, the day after Christmas, we got like a foot of snow, and then we got that much rain on top of it that turned to ice, and we got more snow. And I've never seen the roads that bad in Fairbanks.
Neither have I.
And I'm sure a lot of mechanics made a lot of money that spring fixing front ends and stuff like that. But I guess my question is, and this is maybe just old school thinking, but you know how they do stuff in Prudhoe? They just rake everything. Would that almost be better just for the state to do in certain times? Just leave this much hardpack and just rake it. You'd have smooth roads in the wintertime all the time.
Well, you're not going to rake it with straight edges. You're not going to rake it with serrated edges unless you use button bits. I agree with you. I think when they scratch the parking lots and the roads and whatnot with those button bits and sharp, real tight serrated edges, it scuffs it up, and as long as they stay maintaining it with that, yeah, I think that's better traction.
But you're getting traction that way.
Yeah.
I guess that's my whole point. It's maybe to save money, but
well, you can't. Part of the reason, we used to use button bits up on the Hall Road all the time, extensively, and they would cut the beaver. That was the only thing that I could cut the Beaver Slide with was button bits.
Yeah.
But it's dirt, so their biggest argument was, well, if you use button bits on the high float, you're going to eat up the high float, and you're going to damage it. I get that. You put a little down pressure. If you've kept it clean all winter long, you put some down pressure on rainy, freezing rain, you're going to be cutting into the high float. But a little snowpack's always pretty good, because you're not going to go backwards if you come to a stop as easily on snowpack as you are on frozen rain.
yeah.
And freezing rain that's hard to fight freezing rain. It's hard to beat that battle.
Yeah.
We hate it as operators, and I hated it even more as a truck driver. I don't like driving on freezing rain. Just that, like in 21, like you were saying, you couldn't drive down Airport Road and stay on the road unless there was a crown in the road and you were right in the center of it.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to beat.
And then going back to 21, on the Richardson, you'd have those, every crack, you'd have those pockets. you couldn't do more than 40, 45 if you didn't want to, rip your front end apart. And I was thinking, why don't we fill that with water and let it freeze? But I mean, that takes time.
That's a good idea.
Time and resources too. But I was just, it made sense to me as just a normal guy, but.
Well, that's the same thing with potholes. In the wintertime, not to get, my boss is upset with the comment I'm about ready to make, but sometimes if they don't fix some of these potholes through the Canute Flats, as an example, that are a foot deep. I mean, sometimes in the wintertime, those are deep, and they'll break your wheel, they'll break your springs, or they'll break the bead. They're going to break something.
There's
on
a
the
car
truck.
sitting there right now that's got a broken windshield and a broken wheel. It's been there for
I'm not surprised.
months.
But sometimes, in the wintertime, after things get cold, fill it with sand and ice it in. At least it'll help it out until spring.
Yeah.
And then fix it right. But don't leave it all winter long without. I mean, do you think it's bad in a truck? Try hitting one of those things in a pickup.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there's not more damage done on. I mean, these vehicles aren't made to take that kind of abuse.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Canute Flats. They're all over the place. But yeah, we carried, when I was working at Jim River, we tried to carry, at least 4 or 5 buckets of sand and a couple 5-gallon jugs in the back seat to where it didn't freeze. And sometimes you may not fix very many, but you do it enough all winter long. Every time you go out, you fix 1 or 2 holes. You can get a lot of holes fixed in the wintertime, just temporarily. Just fill them with sand, ice them in, smooth them out to where some tourist doesn't hit one. I saw on the Beaver Slide those sinkholes that are there. It was springtime, and I was blading the Beaver Slide. I had just gotten to the Beaver Slide to start working on it. It was terrible shape. And it was summertime, and the only way you can really fix stuff like that is to cut it out and then redo it. You can't just cover it up, and because it's going to get blown out the first time someone comes by. This guy comes off the top of the hill, and he is just packing the mail. And he didn't make it to the bottom. He hit one of those sinkholes, and he ended up ragdolling off down into the rocks, and it was a fatality. And I had just made 2 passes to smooth it out, to kind of smooth it out, but it didn't fix it. And he got hurt real bad. And when it got, I had to do a report on it, and it was, well, we weren't allowed to cut it out. You didn't want us to cut it out. You just wanted us to cover it up. And same thing with these potholes in the wintertime. You got to cut them out to fix them. They can't just, anybody who's run a blade or a loader or anything like that. Well, you guys are on the road every day, so you see somebody fills it in the summertime. If it turns to mud, if it's raining, it just blows right out. Well, at least in the wintertime.
Yeah, that'll hold.
It might help, but they don't. A lot of places don't do that, and I don't understand, why they're not carrying, 15, 20 yards of sand in the back of the pickup. And some places do. There's a couple operators on the road that do that automatically. They don't even ask permission, and that got me into trouble by not asking for permission sometimes.
Yeah, but all the truck drivers were buying you steak dinners, probably.
No, I don't.
Or they should be.
Well, no, I know they're not going to break down in my section of the road as bad. I'm not going to find them without a wheel.
Yeah.
But you always miss 1 or 2, and inevitably someone's going to hit that 1 or 2 that you missed. And they may not be as big as the ones that you fixed, but they do grow.
Yeah.
And every year they come back, and they come back, and they come back.
Yeah.
But in general, long story short, there's been such an improvement in the last many years that it's gotten better and better and better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a positive thing is guys need to realize you older guys had it worse than the new guys. The road used to be a whole lot worse, like we were talking about earlier. It's just,
Technology has come so far, with all the equipment and whatnot. It's some of the guys that have been there as long as I have, we've seen some pretty crummy road and driven on some pretty crummy road. And I was one of the worst ones back in the day when I had my own equipment on the road. Boy, there's several times where I wanted to stop a blade hand who's running down the road with 6 inches with his blade off the road because he's in a hurry to get back for dinner. That didn't fly with me.
yeah.
And I've had several instances to where I blocked the road and stopped some DOT guys before I worked for them. And I've been reminded about that I was one of the worst offenders for mouthing off at them. And it taught me a lesson, really, that, there's really no reason to be driving down the highway with your blade 6 inches off the ground where it's gravel. And there are rough areas of road that, if you got any cutting edges left, wear them out. Don't change them because they're not worn out. But don't drive back and forth 50 miles because you're watching the clock.
Yeah.
That's just the way the industry is.
Yeah.
So.
Was there any other thing that you learned? I mean, going from being a truck driver to jumping in that equipment like that, is there? Because I look at some of these newer truck drivers. They're not announcing themselves or different things and just scaring these blade hands. It's like, man, there's probably some scary times where you get surprised out there if you're not where you need to be.
Yeah, there's been a lot of those. Some guys breaking over the top of the hill when you're in the middle of the road going up, or coming around you when you're not, you're concentrating on the road or your blade, and you're leaving a berm down the road, and some guy comes flying by you without a notice. I kind of learned to always expect the unexpected. Goes back to knowing if they knew where they were on the road. A lot of them are new people that don't really know. Oh goodness, here comes a hill. I should have slowed down for it. Oh crap, there's a blade in the middle of the road. Which side am I going to take? Well, most of your operators blade the same pattern every time. And if you get to know them, after you've been on the road for a while, you can figure, okay, they're going to want you to take the right side instead of the left side, the right side instead of the left side, because they're working the toe of the blade, not the heel of the blade. So they're concentrating on how far out is that mow board, how much do they got to bring it in for you to get by, and you get to trust that blade hand a little bit more, and that blade hand gets to trust the truck drivers a little bit more. But there's so many new people on the road. When I quit running blade on the haul road, it was a lot of new guys have come on since then, and it's like a dash for the cash. They don't. They're mad at the state operators anyway, because it's a rough road, and sometimes they can't do any more than they're doing because, first of all, they don't have any help, and secondly, the equipment fleet on the haul road they've gone from 14 Gs to 140 and 160s, which are a lot lighter. They don't have the down pressure. They can't cut like the 14s do. They don't have the length of the mow board. They're just a lighter machine. They're quicker, but they can't do the job. And that's been a learning experience with the state that I think they've realized that they might be a little cheaper to maintain, but they can't do the job that, of course, like a 16, they can cut some dirt on the pass. You know, you're not going to do that job up on the pass with a 160 or a 140 that you're going to do with a 16. And the same thing applies on regular flat road where they're building road or trying to repair road. You can't cut some of that stuff out with a small machine. It's and they're learning that, but to meet after you drive on the road for a while, you learn to drive way ahead of yourself. You know, you're not just looking at the next corner. You're preparing yourself. Okay, I can. If I crowd the center line, the crown on this corner on like oh shit corner, that next right-hand corner. What if there's somebody coming around that corner? You when you're going into the bottom corner, you're planning on someone coming around, so you're maintaining the inertia or the speed or whatever to make that hill. You're driving ahead of yourself. You're planning for the unexpected. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, and even the operators, when you're cutting a hill in a corner, say as an example, you have in the back of your mind, well, what's the plan when somebody comes around that corner? Are they going to be going too fast? Are they going to be able to navigate that corner? Are they going to jump the berm? Are they going to take the inside? Some of those are unknown, but you plan on that. The same thing with meeting somebody on the road. Am I going to meet anybody coming around this corner or that corner? Are they going to touch their brakes in the corner and trailer come around? Are they driving out of their means? Are they driving too fast for the conditions? Or it's just a psychological thing that you learn. And when you learn it, your odds of staying on the road and not being in an incident are so much stronger that it's not just getting the load from point A to point B. It's everything in between that's all part of the job to be safe. And I can honestly say in all the years experience, and I've, since day one of the Dalton Highway, I've never had an accident on the haul road. And part of that, I think I was taught by some of the best guys on the road to don't drive with your head up your butt, keep your eyes open. If you get tired, pull over and stop. That's where a lot of guys, I think, have, they push, and we all know that you commit yourself driving into a blow. Well, you're not going to pull over and stop and sleep, but that's one of my fog and getting into a blow. At my age, I get tired easier now, so I'll stop and take a nap before I go into it, even if I get left behind. I'm not driving into that. But as far as equipment operation and driving truck, I just found, and even piloting for my own safety, it's like I'm driving way ahead of where I'm at. Knowing where you are on the road, I think is a big secret.
And you're always leaving yourself an out, it seems like, because like I notice with them blades, it seems like they'll start a berm on top of a hill to kind of give, if you're driving out there, you don't know, and you see this berm, it's like, oh, there's a sign they're letting you know somebody's out there, but it seemed like the blades are always leaving another lane open.
Yeah, you try and leave them an out. You try and leave them a plan B if they need to.
Yeah.
If they got to go from the top of the slide to the very bottom in the southbound lane, and you're in the middle of the road, well, so be it. But there's always a surprise where they might come by, and all of a sudden, here's some guy coming up behind you unannounced. And I've had several scares, several real surprises with people coming by me where totally unexpected. And or when it's snowing really hard and you're trying to keep a lane open, and all of a sudden they're jumping a berm and there's snow flying everywhere, and it's like, you're not going to make it. You better stay back behind me or let me get to the top of the hill. But there's always an impatient there's always one that's going to be impatient. Oh, I can do it. I'll get there.
Would that annoy you as a blade operator when someone would cut through your windrow and then snow would fly all over the
Makes
area?
me so mad.
Oh, that used to make me mad at the university too. Just like, really?
Yeah, it's like I just cleaned that up, and now that I've got to clean it all up before I can continue on to make my passes, and yeah, that's pretty annoying.
I try not to ever cross the berm if you can. I mean, sometimes you can't, but it's.
And if you're that guy that's going to do that to a blade operator, chances are he's going to remember who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And next time they're not going to make your life the easiest the next time around, But that's just courtesy between the drivers and the truckers. And for the most part, everybody gets along. I don't really know that there's ever been anybody that has been sad to see you out there working a blade on the road. Everybody's pretty nice when they see you out there, even trying,
Yeah.
to make a difference. I mean, there's that respect that you get both directions. And for the most part, all the truck drivers when I was blading were really pretty courteous. Most of them knew who I was, and
You were working. You were always out there.
when they're going to meet me and where they're going to meet me. Some of them, like you said, set their schedules at nighttime to, if we leave town at 3:00 in the morning, we're going to hit the knob just about the time he's done with the knob, or he's going to be starting up the beaver slide at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and might have one pass done enough. Yeah, so and it's kind of funny too, because sometimes Dale Crop was always so funny, because I for some reason I'd meet him pretty much about the beaver slide. He'd set his schedule when he was hauling groceries, and every once in a while he'd have some fresh donuts or sandwiches or something like that, or a fresh cup of coffee. And I'll wait until you get to the top, John, before I start off. You got your coffee cup with you? And yeah, it was always kind of fun to kind of try and beat that schedule. But
As far as like when you see a truck coming at you and you're in a blade and you're working, would you rather that guy hurry up and get to you fast and then go by you slow, or go really slow for 3 minutes?
I'd rather him go slow for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
That way he could set up his pass and I could set up my pass.
Okay.
Because that could change really quick. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I might want him to jump the berm, or I'll lighten up my cut to where it's not so deep to where he can cross the berm. I mean, that's where you're getting your flat tires, is crossing those berms, because
Yeah.
I'm pulling everything on the road.
Yeah.
You know, there's cutting edge, there's nails, there's who knows what's in that road, you know, especially if we're pulling ditch lines.
Pieces of broken truck.
Absolutely. Broken delineators, stuff that's going to go through your tires or
Yeah.
sidewalls or something. You guys don't want those flat tires.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times where I'll just cut the berm out to where they can make a pass through. If they're going slow enough, I can do that and
Yeah.
back up and pick it up and go. But there's always one or two that are going to come flying along, and then all of a sudden they're going to cross the berm or they're going to have to back up.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that doesn't happen normally they're pretty good about crossing, and most of them will always ask, which side do you want me on, or you want us to wait?
Yeah.
A lot of them, okay, we'll wait until you make another pass,
Yeah.
Which is always cool.
And a lot of times you're going to have to wait behind the blade because there's traffic coming your way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just how it is sometimes.
Yeah.
And then Aaron, for a lot of new guys in the summertime, or even in the winter when they're doing the water, they're spraying the water, you don't want to be going too fast through that stuff after they've wet the road down.
Oh, especially the calcium and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. Worst thing on your electrical too,
Yeah.
especially when we're doing calcium.
Yeah.
That calcium goes into the dirt and blends in and whatnot, and it's still going to be corrosive on your truck. I mean, even though it's set up and you don't see it, it's when it rains, it's going to get in your frame rails, and of course that's the most important thing to get off your truck, is off the electrical, but it's super, super corrosive. And then we do mix salt with some of the sand, and sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's hotter, and of course we all know what salt does too. So
What's your opinion on that, mixing it with the sand? And I know, is that somewhat of a newer thing the state started doing in recent years?
with the salt,
With the salt, mixing it with the sand and putting it on the hills?
no, we've used salt from day one.
Okay.
It's just some loads are hotter than others. Some guys certain areas will mix it hotter. I don't like real hot sand. It's easier to cut because it makes it softer.
Yeah.
But if it does freeze up, it's slick, man. It turns to glass. But
Changes the freezing point too. So
yeah, and then the D1, certain areas will use D1 as sand to mix with the salt. I'm not a fan of D1 to mix with salt. I want frac sand.
Yeah.
And it's more expensive to manufacture because you got to crush it, fine crush it. Three-sided rock that's really the only thing that I found worked on the Beaver Slide was frac rock. And I could take 8 yards, this is just my opinion, but the beginning of my shift we worked a week on, week off when I was working for DOT. Now they're 2 on, 2 off. But you take an end dump of sand and use that whole load on the Beaver Slide. It's 8 to 10 yards. Well, if you go out there, if you blade the hill and then go sand it and then maintain it for the rest of the week and scuff it up, you're bringing that rock up all the time. D1, a truck will come bombing down the hill and blow all those fines off the road, and that little round rock that's in D1 gets blown off the road. You don't have any more sand on the road. But if you use that frac rock that the wind won't take it and it doesn't roll because it's three-sided rock, they're like chips.
Yeah.
But if you scuff it every day, it doesn't take much just to drop your blade and make a couple passes on the Beaver Slide every day.
Yeah.
You're going down there anyway, and if you make a pass up, pass down, you're scuffing that material up on the road. Chances are they can run that hill without chains because that sand is still on the road. They
Yeah.
keep one wheel on it. You know how that goes. But the state sometimes didn't want us to use that frac rock because it cost twice what this D1 cost. But the maintenance, the bottom line, the maintenance at the very end of the year is so much less because you're only doing it once a week rather than 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
I thought it made a difference.
Yeah.
And and to scuff it, you leave a little bit of snowpack on the road to where you can. I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And it did make a difference. But when I was working for DOT as well, we were allowed to use button bits. And now they don't let those guys use button bits. And I think that's really a travesty.
So for folks that don't know what that is, what are button bits?
They're carbide tip buttons that the blade has. Oh gosh, I can't even remember how many, but I think 78 to 100 buttons on each blade.
Yeah.
on a full 14-foot moldboard. And when you put them in, you can put them in with a hammer, and they spin.
Yeah.
They roll, and you keep them sharp with your angle, and you sharpen them with your angle. You don't just flatten them out.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, you know what? You're an operator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you sharpen your edges. An operator will sharpen his own edges without having to change them all the time.
And that's what a lot of new blade guys don't understand.
Exactly. Well, the button bits, they'll cut frozen ground and ice, whereas a serrated edge won't.
Yeah.
And no matter how sharp they are, they're gonna scuff it. And
A lot better than Scarfires then, too.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. And you know, Scarfire is better than a straight edge, but
Yeah.
and I'm by no means an old seasoned. I'm not a blue top blade hand, but I kind of knew my section of road and learned what worked on our section of road, and I do it as if I was driving a truck over it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to be driving a truck back up this road when I'm done blading it. So how am I going to want it?
Yeah.
And I really kind of took pride in the fact that, well, it's been all week and nobody's complained about the hills and nobody's gone backwards on my stretch of road, and so far so good, you know. And then it's like, gosh, John, we knew when you were there and we know when you're not there, but
It's kind of like Gino on the pass.
yeah, there's a lot of really good hands on that road, and those good hands are all retiring and going away, and there's still some good ones that take really pride in what they do, and there's some good ones. I wish some of them had moved to stretches of road that really needed good hand instead of flat blacktop, you know. And yeah, Gino was one of the best on the.
I always wondered how he did that. It's like you could see other guys, it looked good, but it wasn't good. But Gino, it's like if Gino was on the hill, you just drove over it. And
He
it's
could
like,
feel it. He could feel the hill.
Now, was he scratching the hard pack and getting the rock in there too, or was he leaving some hard pack on the pass?
He'd do both. It depends on the temperature.
Yeah.
You know, if it was 30 degrees, you know, you do it one way. If it's 20 below, you do it a different way.
Yeah.
You know, and it depends on how much snow you have too.
Yeah.
So
A lot of factors go into it. I got one more question before you want to take a break, or you want to wrap this up?
well, it don't matter to me.
Traditional or the joystick controls on a blade?
that's a good question. I learned to run stick controls, not the joystick,
Yeah.
just traditional controls with steering wheel and the implements. But I had a very difficult time when we went to the M model.
Yeah.
And I was there when that was first introduced to the haul road, the M model. And driving down the road, trying to keep it straight was scary.
Yep.
You know, and I couldn't stand it when I first got into one. And we were required to learn them.
Yeah.
And I ran, you know, I was really fortunate at Jim River when I was there, because we got the first M model on the road, and they kind of passed it from camp to camp to camp to camp for everybody to try out. It was a 14, and I started getting a little bit used to it, and after a while I didn't want to give it up because it was quick, it was easy. The one thing I didn't like about it, if you stalled it, you were screwed until you recycle everything. You couldn't even drop the moldboard.
Yeah.
You know, if you spin out and go backwards, you're in deep yogurt. I've been backwards in a blade off
Oh man.
of Connection Rock one time. I went backwards for a pretty good ride, but the M model, they're not making everybody train in a traditional blade now. Everything's so computerized that, you know, the M model joystick, that's all some of these new hands are learning how to run.
Yeah.
They're not real. I guess it's the same thing with trucking, you know. And unless you've learned to drive a truck that was underpowered with a heavy load and learn what your, you know, the danger zones and the do's and don'ts of that heavy load, same thing applies to the equipment. I mean, I've never driven a loader that was stick controlled. It was always traditional controls.
Yeah, I haven't either.
And I think that would be a little different.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that, because I know you see a lot of these newer loaders that are joystick, and I talked to some of the people who are like, yeah, they're not too bad, you know, but I think I prefer the traditional controls on a blade.
Yeah.
Although I do kind of like some of the stuff with the joystick, but
I don't like the steering.
The steering?
The steering is what gets me. You know,
you're doing like 24, 25 miles an hour.
And all the buttons on the joystick, too. It's like, is it this one or this one? Or
I like that auto center feature, though, how you can center.
You can always bring it back.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't crab. You can always bring it back. Yeah.
But I heard, I had a buddy who used to work up there at Sag River Camp. And I think he said they started going away from the M's up there and were starting to keep the older traditional ones because they were having so many electronic issues with those back. I don't know when this was, probably 2014 or 2015 or whatever.
Right in there.
But he said, and I've noticed that up there at Sag River Camp. They've got a lot of older graders that are traditional controls. And, 14 Gs and 16 Gs that they keep up there. It's like, okay, that's kind of cool still.
The M models are so quick. With the computers, they're so fast to either to roll your blade or your steering or your tilt or your crabbing or whatnot. You try and correct it, you're always overcorrecting.
Yeah.
At least with traditional controls, I found for myself, my mind's a little bit slower than the computer, and it was easier for me to work my way back into everything in a gradual way instead of an immediate.
Yeah.
I mean, like you start, as an example, when you're cutting, making a pass cutting, and let me make it clear, I am no expert. There's some really good operators out there that taught me a lot, but if you're starting to cut too hard, you can either dig too deep all of a sudden, and then if you try and correct it, you're picking it right up off the ground, and then you're leaving it's just, you can make more of a mess than you can clean up. So for myself, I found it better for me just to run a traditional, a G or an H model as my.
There's something about having a steering wheel too, isn't there?
Yeah. I have one of the guys that worked with me at camp came back one day and he says, "I'm not taking that out again." I says, "Well, how come?" I said, "It's brand new. We don't even have 100 hours on this machine, and we're here to all learn it." He said, "I almost killed somebody today." I said, "Well, that kind of woke me up." And I says, what was it, the steering? He said, "Yeah." He said, "I tried to correct with the joystick, and I overcorrected, and I almost sideswiped him."
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I can see that real easy because it happened to me. And
it's happened to me too.
Yeah, it's scary.
And you even see it in town here with some of these guys. You're going past them on the Mitchell or something, and they kind of come over just a little bit.
Yeah,
that steering is sensitive on that joystick.
For blue topping or fine blading a road at a real slow speed, I think the M model probably excels.
Yeah.
Because everything is at a slower pace, and you're barely touching that. Like driving a helicopter, you don't drive a helicopter with the sticklet and with your hand. You use your fingers, and I found that to be the same thing on the M model.
The finer detail. So, sorry, Aaron, we're talking about running blades here. This is a trucking podcast.
Yeah, we've kind of gotten off channel here, but
well, that's kind of I wanted to talk about that while we were on here, but I did have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
Did you ever have a Western Star with a caution flying debris sign on it?
Oh my God. Okay, I guess I got to come clean with that.
That's a famous photo.
It is. It's still sitting in the driver's room, I think, at Coalfoot too. Yes, I did, and that was the truck I was driving at the time. You want to hear how that all came about?
I've seen the picture forever, and I just found out the other day that was your truck.
Oh, you did? Well, back in the day, during road restrictions, we used to always take bulkers up to Hilltop or up to 28 Mile, and we'd take 3 trucks up and make 2 loads out of it. And I don't know if you've ever hauled bulk cement like that, but when you're pumping into those bulkers and you're standing on top, it's a dust cloud. You can't see anything. I was on top of the tanker, and there was a hydro axe parked over off the driveway, off the parking lot there at 28 Mile, and I didn't see the sign on it. And a couple of my best friends, actually Ray Cruz and Dave Smallwood, were there with a couple loads. We were all making, I don't know how many loads we were, all three of us were leaving there to go north. So we were transloading a bunch of cement up there. And while I was up on top of the truck, they ran over and took that sign off that hydro axe that said "Caution Flying Debris," and they wired it onto my grill, onto my radiator. Well, when we were done, I walked around. I didn't notice it. It wasn't there when I left town. I didn't really pay attention to my grill. And when we left 28 Mile, everybody was waving at me and, "Hey, how you doing?" Like we were old buddies, and I didn't know what they were talking. I just waving back at them, and I drove all the way to Coalfoot without seeing that sign. And we stopped at the Yukon River. I walked around the truck. I didn't see the sign. And when we got to Coalfoot, I'm walking around the truck in the parking lot, and I see this sign on there, and I knew exactly what was going on at that point. And to this day, people call me Flying Debris on the haul road.
Really?
And people from way back when that knew the story behind it know the history behind that sign, but it was just when people when I'd meet people on the road that trip, it was, "Hey, there's flying debris." I was like, "What are you talking about? Am I rocking you, or am I going by too fast?" Or it became a standing joke, especially with me because I take things too serious all the time. But that's the story behind that flying debris picture up at Coalfoot in the driver's room with the Western Star. And I was driving for Mason. What was his first name? Cal Mason. That was his Western Star at the time. And when I got back to town, I put that back on the grill and parked it in the shop. And when he came in, he saw that sign. He said, "What is this all about?" And of course, Dave had to tell him the story behind it, and he just shook his head. But
Dave was quite a prankster, huh?
always pulling pranks, and we ran together for 25 years.
So maybe we should run to the airport with the walker there and be ready for him.
Oh, I'd be all about that. Yeah.
So can I just say that picture, the flying debris on the front of your truck, I thought that was just normal for back then. I was like, "Oh, wow, they had signs like that because the rocks are flying and stuff like
and I'm sure the rocks were flying because I did my share of driving with my head up my butt, and I've rocked more than my share of people, I'm sure. But no, that was a ploy on their part as a joke.
Yeah.
And the fact that I got all the way to Coalfoot before I saw the sign made it even. They were in seventh heaven that they got away with it for that long. Yeah, it was Dave Smallwood and Ray Cruz that did that.
Did you ever get those guys back?
I always tried. There's stories that we pulled pranks on each other all the time. Another time it was I was usually the recipient of the jokes. When I had with my cab over, I was always a little bit more. I had more horsepower. I had a V8 Cat in my cab over, so I'd pull the hills a little bit quicker than everybody else would, and I'd make them eat my dust as long as I possibly could. And I left town and I took a nap on top of the knob one time, and just over the steering wheel. I was just laying down because I knew they were coming behind me. They were coming off the Beaver Slide, and I'm on top of the knob. I could hear them talking. We just had CBs at the time. but I knew Smallwood was coming, so I just laid over the steering wheel, went to sleep, and I don't know how long it had been, 1 or 2 hours later or something. For whatever reason, I opened my eyes and I looked up, and he had a van. And he pulled around me, and he backed up about 6 to 8 inches from my bumper. And when I opened my eyes and looked up, here's this van right square in front. I almost had a heart attack. I thought I crammed on the brakes. He thought that was the funniest thing.
Was he outside watching that, or
no? He was
okay.
he was sitting in his truck, but
okay.
he backed up next to me, and he got out a couple times to make sure he got close enough without hitting me, knowing that when I open my eyes, all I'm going to see is the back of the van. Just pranks that he got away with to do to me, but that's okay. His day's still coming. So I haven't given it up yet. So if you see him on the road, just tell him to watch his mirrors, because I'm a coming. Oh, it was there was a group of guys when we worked at Sourdough that at the time during that era, there was like a dozen of us that were really family, really close, and everybody was a prankster. I mean, even the office was pulling jokes and pranks on us, and we were all at the age to where we got away with it, and we thought it was funny. Some of it was pretty malicious, but good times. Nobody got hurt because of it, and it was just honest fun. Some of it was a little extreme, but
oh man. I had one other question about your time up the ice road on the cat trains, and you were kind of telling me about that a while ago. It's an interesting thought, people would have died for that, and you were kind of miserable.
Well, I was just a little kid. I was kind of loaned out, and it was just one trip, and it was quite an education. I mean, way ahead of my time. That was in '68, the winter of '67, '68, and went from Live and Good North, and there was already a cat trail. I just got to go along and be part of that time in history just for that one trip. But I didn't drive a truck on that or anything like that. I got some stick time. I learned how to idle a dozer up the road a little bit, and that was another time I got myself in a little bit of trouble because I didn't get along with one of the mechanics. And my job was to gather up fresh snow in a bucket and melt it for drinking water, and then dump the honey buckets in the very back. And this one mechanic was determined that I shouldn't be there, so I spiked his water with the honey bucket.
Oh my God.
And yeah, he was bound and determined to make me walk all the way back to Bettles. But he didn't. So, but yeah, that was, we were hauling rig mats for the runway at Sag River and fuel. And there was a couple other real cat trains ahead of us and behind us. But
was that fuel in drums or was it in a big tank?
drums.
Okay, yeah.
Where was the runway at there?
In Sag River, as you're coming out of the 70-mile flats.
Oh, by Happy Valley, or?
No, north of Happy Valley.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know where that's at.
Where you're coming out of the Sag Flats, right where the gazebo is. If you look off to the right up towards Pump 2, right before the corner where you go around, there used to be a runway right there along on the river.
Okay.
That's all demobed and taken out now. Even the rig mats, the runway mats were removed.
I wonder why they picked that spot for a runway.
I don't know. It was a dew-line site. So, for early warning tracking system.
That's neat.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad kind of loaned me out when I was a kid gave me the choice if do you want to do it. He had a couple friends that were involved in it, so, and I was up for an adventure all my life. I just wanted to do something extreme, and anything to get out of school. So it was in the spring of 68.
Huh.
The spring of 68, March of 68, we did that.
Man, that'd be fun. I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, it was kind of boring, though. I mean, really. I mean, I walked a lot, from the front to the back, to the front to the back, to the front to the back, to the front to the back. But then I'd get to ride on the dozers, We didn't have ROPS. We didn't have cabs, just a tarp.
Yeah, tarp was to keep you guys warm,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Strictly for heat.
Yeah.
How long were you gone?
From 30 to 40 days on that one trip. And then I flew out in a DC-3.
Oh, so you only went north.
I only went one way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the total time.
Was that just one time you went?
Yeah, just
Okay.
once in my life.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we were talking to Dwight Busby, and he said he got to go up there on the cat trains.
Yeah,
He said that was
Busby,
pretty-
I think his dad, if I'm not mistaken, was involved with green construction.
Yeah.
And that's the trip I made was Tennessee Miller and green construction kind of joint venture. The load was going. They went all the way to Prudhoe Bay. I didn't go all the way to Prudhoe Bay, but I jumped on a DC-3 in Sag River.
What was Tennessee Miller like?
I didn't really know him myself. He was a friend of my dad's.
Was he a quiet guy from what you could tell, or?
No. When he spoke, you listened to him, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it was his way or the highway.
Yeah.
He was a pretty smart guy. He had, there's a couple stories about him that I've known from back in the 50s. Through a neighbor of mine that flew for him, which is a whole other deal other than the haul road, but it was oil related. When they found oil, I could tell you that story, but he was quite the adventurer. Yeah, I don't think he ever really did anything that he wasn't successful at.
Yeah.
He had a lot of foresight and nothing that couldn't be done or moved or finished, And once you started something, you kept at it, you finished it. But very determined man.
Was he in Fairbanks, or where was he at?
At the time?
Was he living here in Fairbanks?
No, he had a mule farm. He raised mules out in America. But he was up here. He started Pioneer and Frontier Transportation, and he was one of the original people that found oil in Prudhoe Bay. And, he spent time standing on the pack ice because the little airplane that they were flying in had no nav aids, and they got caught in the weather, and that's how they found oil.
That's crazy, isn't it?
That was pre-seismic technology, flying around, and I don't know. I really don't know how they knew, but he had, like, how did gold miners ever settle in the Koyukuk Valley? I mean, and they walked there.
Yeah.
How did they ever know where to look for gold?
Exactly.
I mean, that he was that way with oil, but he had a huge mule farm back in America. In Tennessee. I think that's why they called him Tennessee Miller.
Oh, okay.
But then he started Frontier and Pioneer oil field up here.
It's crazy thinking about, you just mentioned like the gold miners back in the day when there were no roads up here in Alaska.
the roads were the rivers.
Yeah.
In the wintertime, they go up them in the wintertime or pull up them in the summertime.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy looking at how many gold mining towns there used to be all over the state of Alaska.
Right.
It was just a territory.
Yeah.
And now there's nothing left but a few buildings.
Yeah.
You
They were pretty tough characters back
yeah,
then.
a lot tougher back then.
Yeah.
We got it so good now.
Yeah, you think about like Hammond River, just north of Dietrich. There was a whole community there. There was thousands of people there. Well, if you ever drive back up into the Hammond River to the mine there, that you can see where it was. There's still remnants of it. And there's still an active mining operation there, a small operation there. But when you think of how many thousands of people were between there and Wiseman, it's hard to believe that there was that many people. How did they know where they were going? How did they get there? It's like a pick and a shovel and a mule or a horse or a backpack. It just blows my mind. And I'm a history nut, so I've read a lot of stories about gold mining and, how did those guys come up the Koyukuk and make it as far as they did, and what did they look for?
Yeah.
What am I missing here? What did I miss out on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really fascinating to me. And then, like you said, there's so many communities that are mining oriented that they found what they were looking for, And I've played around in the gold business, the mining business a little bit, and I've never found that big mother lode that you always look for,
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, you got something else you want to ask, Aaron?
No.
So where do we go from here? Are you driving truck anymore? Are you piloting?
I pilot car once in a while. I'm kind of phasing down to where it's I do some firefighting in the summertime and with my boats, and pilot carring. That's kind of fallen off. That's a whole new industry right now, is pilot carring. The companies that I work for were pretty slow right now, so. Which I'm okay with. I don't know how many miles I have on the haul road, and it doesn't really matter, but it's I've been pretty lucky, and it's done me well. I'm glad to have been a part of it, but I think I've retired 3 times, and all 3 times it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I get bored really easy. I've got to have something to do, some project, and
Yeah.
And the piloting, I'm not driving truck, though. I pulled a few loads here and there for a few people, and I don't want to do that on a regular basis. At certain times, I've kind of thought, well, geez, why not? I'll go do it. They need a break, and they want me to do it. So
What if Dave Smallwood asked you to go up with him for a trip?
I don't know. I don't know.
You wouldn't do it for Dave?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Like, what if it was you, Dave Smallwood, and Dwight Busby?
Dave's actually asked me. He said, "What? I'm coming back to go to work. He's coming back to go trucking for the next 2 years in the wintertime." And it's like, why don't you do that? I know he'd put you on. I said, yeah, I know he'd put me on. He's asked me, but I think those days are probably behind me a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd entertain the idea maybe for a trip or two. But
Yeah, maybe a trip or two.
Yeah, just for old time's sake.
Flying debris.
Yeah, I don't know about that. No signs. There won't be any signs on the front of the truck for that. But it's the piloting has been that's a whole other industry that, along with the trucking, that I know you got to have them for oversized loads. But there's a lot of new people doing it now that it's kind of hard to compete with some of them sometimes. It's pilot cars are not sometimes thought of as being a necessity or being somebody that really knows their job. It's more of, well, we'll just grab this guy with a blinky light and a sign, and he can tell the oncoming trucks that we're coming along, and boy, that gets them in trouble sometimes. And it's some of them don't know the road, and I've heard that's where a lot of the new names are coming from, is a lot of the pilot cars and calling out on every hill, and they get the wrong hill, or I don't want to hear every mile where this pilot car's at on the road. It's just like turn the radio off type of thing. But that's becoming a norm now with the safety part of it, and I'll still do that on occasion, but yeah, for now I think I don't know what my next adventure is going to be. Maybe, I don't know. I just playing it by year at a time right now. As I get older, it's more thinking of what do I want to do rather than what I need to do.
Uh-huh.
I know the haul road, and that's been my life, so that's kind of my comfort zone. I'm not afraid to drive north. It's just some of the stuff that I got to do now to go north.
Yeah.
What's probably your favorite spot up there?
I have a lot of favorite spots up
Yeah.
there. North of the Brooks Range, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Sukapak and that whole area down through Wiseman and Dietrich, and there's every time I've driven north, I can honestly say this, there hasn't been 2 trips in my life that have been the same. There's always something new to see, or the reflection off of some of the mountains that you see different stuff that you never saw the last trip, or the wildlife. It's always a draw for me, is to see wildlife, or the different weather patterns, and some of it's pretty exciting, sometimes, or hearing the voice of an old hand that's still hanging in there, and they know who you are. It's like,
And you got that history together.
well,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know that I ever drove truck up there, so I might just be a pilot car to some of them, and that's okay. Or a lot of them don't even know that I used to work for DOT, which that's okay too. But I know what I'm doing up there, so, and I'm pretty confident that I can do my job regardless where it is on that road. But
Yeah.
it's I'd rather run with guys that take their job seriously rather than just a dash for the cash.
Yeah.
These pipe hauls that are, they're back and forth drivers and pilot cars. Some of them, it's like I've heard people talk on the radio, like, oh geez, we drove home from Prudhoe Bay in 7 hours. It's like there's no way. There's just no way. I don't care if it's a good day. That's pretty fast.
That's flying.
That's beyond flying,
Yeah.
and it's just my opinion, but that's driving beyond your means, but without being safety conscious. And we've all heard stories about guys that have made quick trips, and I'm guilty. I've driven way too fast coming home sometimes, trucks and in a pickup, and I've made some pretty quick trips. So to say 7 hours is a little bit fast. I've never done it like that. Not even close.
Yeah.
On a good day. But
So
Bring Happy Men back or leave it?
Bring it back. Let's get rid of the boys. It separates the men from the boys. I've often thought that would be a good way to get rid of a lot of these out-of-state drivers that really have no clue. They make one trip and they have a good trip and they think that they're veterans. Happy Man would definitely wake a few people up. I don't know that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
But for me, when people brag about their year or two driving the haul road and they've never even heard of Happy Man or don't even know where it's at, it's like, bring it back.
So if they had some stands set up there with popcorn and concessions, would you ever go sit there and watch?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't do that.
All right.
But it was
free hot dogs,
Happy Man was a challenge for anybody.
Yeah.
It was not a cakewalk. That was a serious hill. They were all serious hills, but that one right there, if ever they were going to bypass one hill, that was the smartest one that they bypassed, in my opinion.
What about the Beaver Slide? What if they went around?
They could easily have bypassed the Beaver Slide and gone right up Fish Creek from Canooty Flats.
Yeah.
Why they didn't, I don't have any idea, other than that was a scenic route.
Yeah.
And then they came right up with the pipeline, so...
But in a way, the way they did that road, it makes it exciting to go up there because it's going to be a challenge.
Oh, definitely.
It's going to be an adventure.
Oh, definitely. I mean, people are wanting to know what the Beaver Slide looks like before they even get back over the pass. I mean, it's funny because what's the Beaver Slide looking like? Well, geez, you're just out of Prudhoe Bay. It's going to change in an hour. It doesn't matter where you are. It's going to change before you get there. And, yeah, you hear, and not just the Beaver Slide, what's the pass looking like? Well, it's supposed to snow. Oh, no, it's, we're going to need chains. Well, you'll know when you get there. Ask the next truck that you meet before you get on the hill. I mean, it's kind of funny.
How about chains? Front axle or back axle?
Front axle.
Yeah.
The only thing nice about chaining up the back axle is, if you are sitting there and you got to put a second set on, the front axle's not going to roll over the top of you. Power divider issue to it. Do you have lockers or not? That makes a difference too. But
yeah.
I always like to kind of chew up the road a little bit for my back axle.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did spin out, chances are I'm going to stay there a little bit longer. But
you ever stuck anything behind your tires to try to stop you from sliding backwards?
Yeah, I've thrown chains and portable ratchets underneath my tires, whatever I could find, And I've left them there when I taken off. I mean, I've had to go back and grab a few things.
Yeah.
Or hook them to the frame or something like that to where when you take off, you're going to drag them up the hill.
Yeah.
I have done that with bungee cords. But
you got something on your mind, Aaron?
No.
Oh, okay, you're looking at me like...
He's been awful quiet here. So.
Well, we can wrap this up. Unless you got something else you want to bring up, or
no, just thanks for letting me speak my piece.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and talking to us. We need to have you come back and maybe dive a little deeper into some stuff, which would be maybe bring someone else in here and you guys can.
There's stories that are probably not going to get told.
Well, yeah, that's fine
when you
too.
get a few of us together that are probably too intimidating to talk about, but
the statute of limitations are probably
I'm
over.
sure they're gone. Yeah. There's a lot of years worth of stories that I don't remember a lot of stuff, and there's other people that will remind me about stuff that maybe I don't want to remember. But maybe down the road we'll have a few of them. I've been kind of watching these pictures going by, a lot of these older pictures of equipment and whatnot, and makes me want to dig into some of my boxes full of pictures.
We love pictures.
And dig out a few. A lot of old stuff, back in the day. And
We don't really have any pictures on there yet. Most all our pictures are on the computer here yet. So we need to get them on that picture frame. We got thousands of old pictures, 60s and 70s and 80s on here. So it's fun to go through.
Yeah, it is. Some of those older trucks, I've actually recognized a few of them, and brings back a lot of memories.
I forgot that thing was going over there.
Yeah, it's kind of distracting because I see some of these old wrecks and I'm thinking, gosh, that was back in the late 70s and that was so-and-so, or, yeah.
Cool.
Well, you want to wrap this up? Or?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay, I had one more question, but I'll wait till next time.
Oh, it don't matter.
It was just about Coldfoot. You remember when that got started? You remember when Dick Mackey came up there and
Yes.
had the bus? And
And the tent.
Yeah, do you have any quick stories about that?
No real stories, but I spent a lot of time sitting around that fire trying to warm up and waiting on a cup of coffee with some of the older guys when that's all that was there was that tent and the bus.
Yeah.
And
I heard it would leak a little bit when it rained.
oh yeah, it would. It did. It did, and it was always muddy.
Yeah.
It was always mud.
But it was something up there for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dick was real good to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was those were times that were, even though it was a tent, I mean, they always accommodated the drivers that would come through at any given time to always had a warm cup of coffee, and if you wanted something to eat, they'd make you something to eat. But yeah, those were the good old days.
I'm sure it was a real luxury when they got the shack, the actual restaurant built out of mud boxes.
Yeah, all of our names are on that. A lot of the guys carved their names in on the pole that's in the restaurant right now, and yeah, my name's up on the kitchen side, up on top.
Your nickname, or?
Well, I had a nickname on the haul road that was the same as somebody else, so they kind of took over that nickname on the haul road and went by it, and to this day they still answer to it. So I had to relinquish my CB handle to them. I went by Custer on the haul road back during the pipeline.
Really?
Yeah. And when Dale came to work,
that
and
son of a...
he looks more like Custer. So
joking.
I just kind of backed off of it, and
that's funny.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and when he first came to work on the haul road, he worked for Frontier at the time. When he first started trucking up there, I said, "You can't have that name. That's my name. My name's actually on the pole up there." He said, "It is." I said, "Yeah, it is, but you can go by that." He looked more like Custer than I did anyway.
Yeah.
So
that's actually you. You're the original Custer.
Well, I would say he's older than I am, so I'm gonna relinquish that to him.
Oh, he is a year older, isn't he?
But during the pipeline, that was my CB handle on the haul road, was Custer. Yeah.
And you don't want it to be flying debris, though.
I do not want it to be flying debris. I've kind of assumed that name because if somebody says it, I know who they're talking about.
Okay, we can cut that out if you want us to.
Oh, yeah. It don't matter anymore. It is what it is. But, yeah, there's back then, everybody had a CB handle.
Yeah.
You had, everybody had a CB handle because that's how they knew you. They didn't know your name, but they'd know your CB handle.
Yeah.
Or know your voice.
Yeah.
On the radio, or this guy works for this company, or that guy, Tundra Squirrel works for this company, or whatever. And there's actually a couple squirrels on the road too. There's Larry Payton, and then there's Dave Smallwood.
Really?
Yeah, and they're actually related. So it's kind of funny, and they both go by the name Squirrel.
They're related?
Yeah, they're related. Larry, his sister was married to Scotty Smallwood. And they both, Dave is Tundra Squirrel, Larry is just Squirrel. But he still answers to Squirrel.
Yeah.
So
Good to know.
yeah.
So one more question before we let you go here. Any advice, or not a question, but what would you say to somebody that's like, I'm going to go to Alaska. I've always wanted to go to Alaska. I'm going to go truck on the haul road. What kind of advice would you give them about coming up here?
Learn how to drive on ice if you're going to do it in the wintertime before you go up the haul road. Always expect the unexpected. Learning the road is probably one of the biggest things, and your equipment.
Yeah.
Drive ahead of yourself. Because anything can happen at any given time. We've all had close calls. There ain't a one of us that hasn't had a close call. I wouldn't encourage somebody to come up from America and go right to work on the Dalton Highway. You know, it's not. I guess maybe that's hypocritical because that's how I learned. Yeah, I got thrown into it as a kid, but for me it was more of a challenge, and I wanted to be a truck driver on the haul road. But there's so much to learn before you go up that road. I don't know. I guess I don't really have any good advice because I'm not in that part of the industry anymore, but don't just think because you got 5 million miles running I-5, you're going to come up and go to work on the Dalton Highway and be successful without a real learning experience.
Yeah.
And you hear it from everybody, from any of the veterans that drive up there, all the guys who have been doing it for years and years and years. They'll probably all have somewhat the same attitude. Get some experience on ice and whatnot before you drive the Dalton Highway. They call it the Kamikaze Trail for a reason, and it's not like driving on any other road. It's for me, it's not, and I think anybody who's been up there for a period of time gains a respect for the road that is different than running the Richardson or the Parks Highway. It's not. Granted, we're not pulling doubles up that road. The grades are extreme on the Dalton Highway, which we know. But it takes a certain mindset to be in your comfort zone on the Dalton Highway. It's not. And I've driven on a lot of roads all around the world, and the Dalton Highway is probably one of the most extreme roads. I don't see it as that now because I'm kind of used to it and I'm comfortable with it. But there's always surprises.
But you still have that respect for that road.
I do.
Even at your age now.
I do.
And all the experience you've had up there with millions of miles.
I do respect that road. And those that go up and down the road and up and down the road, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, it's a different breed of truck drivers. They take their lives seriously because the potential for a catastrophe is so high for different reasons. I mean, you know, it's not that often that we hear about guys running down across country in America or anywhere else that a herd of caribou's running across in front of them on a sheet of ice and they've got to stop, or whiteouts or blows, or that's a different game. You start getting into weather like that, or avalanches, or you know, we've all been there, and there's been times I think anybody who's driven the haul road can honestly say, oh crap, I wish I wouldn't have stayed. Or I wish I would have stayed at Coldfoot, or I wish I wouldn't have gone north, or, oh my gosh, I don't want to drive into that blow. But I don't want to sit here for 3-4 days either. But, and then there's those that are in it that are thinking, geez, I know I should have stayed back there when I had the chance, you know. Or, yeah, as far as any advice that I might have was, always expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
Because it's likely going to happen. You know, slow down. Know where you're at. I think that's probably my biggest 2 pet peeves.
Yeah.
Know your equipment and know where you're at. And that's experience tells you that. And you're not going to, you know, you're not going to make 1 or 2 or 3 trips up and down the haul road and know where you're at, because there's places you're not even going to remember you just went through. I mean, yeah, it changes. Yeah, and that's just something that you learn from driving up and down the road. And trust in your equipment.
Yeah. And following your gut too on certain things
means a lot.
Yeah.
Means a lot. You know, common sense means a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not a game. You know, that road's killed a lot of people. And yeah. Seen a lot of crazy stuff. We all have, you know. I mean, it used to be really bad. It used to be a whole lot worse when it was, as far as accidents go, some of them were just horrible. But equipment updates now, you got the power to, you know, you're still in the high side when you're topping out some of the hills now that, boy, you were down between first and second gear, just sitting on the edge of your seat, just the RPMs are down to where you know you got to pick up a gear, but you don't dare do it because you don't want to. You're not going to pick it up.
Yep.
Now they've got that potential. You can get over the hills, but I mean, you guys know more than I do because I'm not driving anymore. But yeah, I've often thought that trucks are so smooth now, and they've got so much horsepower, and they're longer, and they're more comfortable to drive, and it's not even the same job as when I started doing it. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to do it, you know, on occasion. And that would get me into trouble because I might like it. I don't know, but I think I'm too old for it now. So my mind doesn't. I'm not as quick thinking as I used to be. I don't react as fast, and reaction time is important, and my eyes might be failing a little bit, and yeah, it's a young man's job. You guys have a lot more adventure spirit than I have at this point in my life, so. But I can tell you stories that it's going to take you guys years before you experience some of those same things, but that's about all.
Yeah.
You know, I've just got some stories to tell, and memories that I don't remember a lot of stuff, so yeah. But I do remember some, like flying debris and whatnot. Anyway.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, John, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And let's do it again sometime.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have probably a lot.
We'll actually put this applause sign to use. You know, we'll turn it on.
Oh, okay. Well, you've got some other characters you're gonna have in here to interview, and we'll look forward to watching some of them.
Right on.
It'll be fun. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, man, I gotta pee. This thing's got to be right in front of my face, don't it?
Yeah, do you want to switch?
No, I'm good.
You know, we were back there in the alley. Have you seen any of these?
Yeah.
What do you think? Are they cheesy or?
No, I think every one you do, you guys are getting better and better